You know what, listeners? Sometimes the most powerful journeys they don't begin with a grand plan, but with a whisper. The kind that tells us there's more to life than what we are living right now. My guest today, Alessandro Grampa, has followed that whisper across continents and across disciplines. As a serial impact entrepreneur and a Buddhist digital nomad, he has spent over a decade blending ancient wisdom with modern science to help people unlock their full potential, rather, fullest potential. And his story isn't just about, startups or biohacking. It is about building a life that feels aligned, resilient, and deeply human. So, today on this episode of the Mindful Journey podcast with Sana, which is me, we are going to walk through that journey together and see what lessons we can all take into our own lives. So, Alessandro, welcome to the show, and it's really an honor to have you here.
Thanks so much, Sana. Thanks for having me.
Great, great. So, Alessandro, to begin with, this is exciting because now for today's discussion, we are going to dive deep into your journey. Um, how did it all pan out? I mean, if you look back, um, was this transition, because you have been an entrepreneur. Um, was it something else that you had thought initially? And something else happened? Was there any specific moment which became like a turning point or maybe an epiphany?
Well, it's funny because at the uh, at the very beginning, you're, you're you were mentioning about the gentle whistle, and for me, this journey it's been kind of like a necessity more than anything else because it all started with me having so many panic attacks that I could not get like on with the full day of business without one, and I was extremely stressed. You said, "Is it like different than what you imagined?" Well, I guess everything. If I knew what I was gonna be kind of facing as an entrepreneur, I don't think I would have done it ever in my life. But well, I guess life put me into that, and sometimes you need to end up doing things that you're not conscious of, so that you can actually learn the very best from them. And yeah, fortunately, let's say, it lasted a long time. I would say this whole period, this whole journey lasted almost almost 10 years. As I mentioned, it started with the panic attacks. From there, I went into meditation and breath work. And then during COVID, my body completely shut down. So I had to go into the science of biohacking and rewiring completely my body and brain so that I could function better. I could redesign who I was. And then later on, that actually went into the more spiritual journey, let's say, that it all started really because of science. So I'm a very big person of science. I come from that background. I was totally not ready, not even willing to open my door to any discussion on spirituality. I actually grew up in Italy, in a family of atheists. So everything that had to be with, some kind of like religion kind of conversation, it was always not very well seen. But then science changed my mind, and especially quantum physics. So when you see the science and you understand that everybody's talking about the same thing, just using different languages, that's really when the real haha moment is like, oh, okay, I've been doing all of this journey. I've understood the pain and the good things that can come out from there. But now I'm starting to connect the dots and everything starts to make sense. Wow, this is really mind blowing.
Yeah, I can understand that, Alessandro. Yeah, and 10 years of I think that's quite a long one in there, Alessandro. And you stepped away from uh, you know all the conventional stuff there. Um, did it cost you anything at the time? Like financially or emotionally or maybe relationships?
Uh, well, it cost me two businesses, which
Oh,
definitely was a lot of energy, a lot of pain, a lot of feelings, and a lot of money. But other than that, I also always been very fortunate to have found a very when you talk about the soulmates, in a very romantic way, that's really who I found. Early on in my life, I'm together with my wife since 13 years. So that has been the anchor. Absolutely. It's been actually probably the start of the real journey, because for the very first time I was forced, but also gently accompanied to change my perspective. When you spend so much time with another person, and it's also, in this case, from another sex, so it's really a different point of view. I mean, I started
yeah.
seeing life not just, more openly, more like less complaining. I was complaining a lot. I used to be like, my nickname in university was Whiny Ale.
Oh my.
Imagine. Everything that I was looking at, I was looking at with the lens of negativity, the lens of this cannot be like this, you should be better. And that's also what brought me to be a founder as an entrepreneur, because I always saw problems, and this energy that I had in me, it was so prevalent that I couldn't just stay and look at it. At some point I said, okay, if anything happens, I need to do something. So I need to start. I started building companies. But the problem is, of course, when you build companies out of like a disbalance, let's say, or when you build them out of necessity of external validation, then clearly, the mechanisms are not always very healthy. And that brought to more and more challenges, more and more tension, more and more stress. But yeah, fortunately, along this way, I know a lot of founders, and not in general, a lot of people that lose partners on the way. For me, it's not been that, and probably I wouldn't be where I am right now if I had to do it alone. To be honest.
Yeah. True, true. Thank you for sharing that, Alessandro. Yeah. And I also think like so many listeners can relate to that moment, like enough is enough. But then also uh the cost you mentioned, like most of us like underestimate how heavy that feels in real time, because it's easy to glorify or romanticize the outcome but not the breaking away. So
Well, the problem is that we watch too much television, and
yeah,
when you watch a movie, they're going to, like, the storytelling journey is always the same. There is, the character, the hero, the guide, and so on, and then there is a tragedy, and then through the tragedy, the hero starts to learn, and then
yeah,
quick for like, fast forward 10 years, and everybody's happy, and there is like an happy ending. The reality struggle, the journey, and so on. But the process to actually turn your life upside down, re-question everything that you've been taught and educated on in the early years of your life. I mean, you're literally redesigning your brain. And it's not as simple as, doing a complete formatting of your computer, SSD. Like, you literally have to go every single neural pathway and rewire it with new thoughts. Every single memory, which is stored in your fascial body, and it's trapped in in your muscles and in your collagen everywhere. I mean, if you want, we can talk about the science of it, but the
okay,
main point is you literally have to go every single step and then click on it. And when you click on it, imagine not like, like a button. Imagine like a finger stuck right into the flesh of an open wound. I mean, it's painful. And then when you do it at the beginning, it's always more difficult. And this is also why the majority of us never get so far, because the very first steps are actually the hardest. I was recently visiting a prehistoric temple in Java. I'm currently living in Indonesia, and there is one of the biggest pyramids here compared to the size of the ones in Egypt or in Mexico. And the guide was explaining me that the very first step of this pyramid is the tallest, is the tallest to step on. Then the more that you go up, and the more that the steps decrease in height. And this is the representation of the spiritual journey. Because the very first step, when you say enough is enough and I need to change my life, then doing that and all of the pain that you've been going through before, it's a huge step. And then slowly but surely, if you never give up, if you continue understanding that there is always more and more to work on, and of course, sometimes you also want to take a break. It's not going this is going to happen everything at the same time. But then slowly the path is going to become much easier because you have less rocks, to take away from your backpack. The problem is that at the beginning, you're literally doing the very first step with a backpack of 100 tons of rocks. That is your trauma. And if you don't release this trauma, you're still trying to hike a mountain with a backpack full of rocks.
I love the analogies here, Alessandro. I love them, both of them. That's really beautiful. It's very practical, and I I don't know. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more enough on this.
Mhm.
Um, okay, now speaking about you know, climbing the ladder or climbing the steps in there, I'll come back to entrepreneurship. It's often portrayed as uh, a very isolating journey, like full of hustle, sometimes burnout, which kind of becomes inevitable. Yet you describe it as a mindful path. Um, how do you, I mean, connect the dots in there? Like, how do you reconcile the chaotic chaotic way of of the chaos of startups with the calmness of what is like defined by mindful living, or let's take the idea of mindful journey in there.
Yeah. Well, a very wise founder told me once that if you're not a religious person, being an entrepreneur is actually the fastest way to spirituality.
Ooh.
Because if you think about it, you are constantly surmounted by a ginormous amount of stress and responsibility. It's not just about you anymore. It's about your employees. It's about the goal of the company. It's about your investors. It's about your clients. It's about your every stakeholder possible. And unfortunately, we've been trained by the Silicon Valley kind of narrative and so on, that this journey is yours, that you are the only responsible one, and you have to figure it out by yourself. And maybe, of course, they never tell you, kind of like straight up front and in your face. They just make you believe a certain amount of things. If you always have to appear in the best shape, fake it till you make it. There is no time for vulnerability, etc., etc. And then, of course, all of this pushes you to a level of loneliness because they say up there is lonely because you're in the top of the pyramid. The reality is that this is one way to build companies. If you actually look at the history of how every other successful business person built their own businesses, it was all about community. It was all about understanding the needs of the people around you. Try to build in a sustainable way. I interviewed many months ago. It was one of my very first interviews with a very seasoned founder, and
Mhm.
is a practitioner of martial arts, is a very wise person. And he told me, in nature, the only thing that grows in a viral way is a virus.
Oh.
If you look at other environments that are healthily stable and sustainable, every other ecosystem, it doesn't grow as a virus. It doesn't grow exponentially. Only a virus grows exponentially. So we are being pushed to grow for the sake of everything else around us, just for, you know, building like building a company, destroying the competition, owning the market. It's like one winner takes all. This is not how nature works. This is not how reality works among humans. I mean, if you look at history of very big companies, I don't know, in the food sector, agriculture, and so on, they're connected with cooperatives. They're small family shops, family business that then later grew, you know, generation by generation. We are now in a situation where they're trying to make us believe that the exponential age is the only way.
Mm.
And if you don't buy the rules, then you're going to be out. And so of course you get the fear of missing out and all of the stresses, so you want to be part of it, because otherwise you're not going to be nobody. You're never going to be, you know, building a successful business. The reality is that you don't necessarily need to follow that. And when you become what I call a quantum founder, you know, at Holgren Wisdom, my new company, we are in the business of mind training and mind education. And so I let the founders understand that A, there is a different reality, and it's still very great picture. I mean, the people that are working in that reality, they are still ambitious, they're still very successful, even economically. So it's not about willing less. It's about doing the journey in a different way and not buying the rules that somebody else taught you and thinking that that's the only way.
Mm. Mm. That's very well explained, Alessandra, and I think um it kind of absolutely makes sense. Um, and also, I mean, you have lived as a digital nomad. You are working across cultures and contexts, and I can definitely see that. Because you know it's obviously reflecting from your insights in here. I strongly believe that, you know, when you get to understand different cultures, when you get to um, uh, be a part of so many different, you know, communities out there, or you see different perspectives, it really brings a different level of openness within you, whether it's mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. How has being constantly on the move shaped your understanding of stability and belonging?
Hmm. I think this has been probably one of the hardest things, because the reality is that 3 out of 4 entrepreneurs out there, they're neurodiverse, me included. I have a DHD and probably many other things. So I always been treated as a black sheep. So the sense of belong is been always hard to understand, because for me, I've been always like not normal. At school, when I was a kid, a teenager, and so on, I was always thinking a little bit differently. And of course, depending on what's your kind of like upbringing, if
Uh-huh.
you're not in the right environment for this kind of energy to flourish, you're always being pushed back, right? You're always being, no, you shouldn't be different. You shouldn't be thinking that you're better than the others, etc., etc. So he also puts a lot of blame on yourself. And for me, the very first time that I felt home, it was actually among entrepreneurs, because we were all black sheeps, and we all wanted to do and achieve great things. We always wanted to go very fast. We were praising, you know, sleepless nights of work and big achievements and so on and so forth. The problem is that that one is also not healthy if you don't know how to balance it. So the real key is understanding what serves you and what doesn't serve you. Does it serve you to be among very highly motivated and aspirational people? Absolutely yes. Does it serve you to the point that if they want to do a Guinness World Record of 7 days straight working without sleeping and compromising their health and their relationships, then probably that doesn't serve you, right? So there is always a balance. I mean, this is the ancient wisdom, kind of like part in me that comes out, because the ancestors always told us about the concept of balance, the yin and the yang, the Shiva and the Shakti. You cannot be just one thing. It needs to be a good combination. The Buddhists talk about living with compassion and wisdom. If you're too wise, you become a guru that is talking from the pedestal, and you've been considered like a piece of crap, because you're farther than the others, you're higher than the others. But if you also, on the opposite side, you always behave with too much compassion, then people take advantage of you, right?
Yeah.
So what's the balance? What does it serve you every single time that you're doing certain actions? That's really the main question. And then when you understand all of this, you also finally understand that there are people very wise around the world that, fortunately, through technology now, they are more and more accessible, because before you maybe had to go like some months in the Himalayas monasteries to find them. Now you can also open YouTube or listen to podcasts like this one, and you can connect online. And these wise people are not buying that bullshit, and they are clearly giving you another alternative, and it's up to you to test it or not, and to understand if it serves you or doesn't serve you. Maybe there are some people that are going to recognize logically
Uh-huh.
that what I'm saying, it makes sense, but from a real practical perspective, they still want their life. They don't want to change. And when people don't want to change, that's okay as well. Maybe not this time, maybe next lifetime you're going to do another trial. The journey is very long. If you understand that everything is energy, and if you understand the science of reincarnation, because it's not anymore just a spiritual concept. There are many, many books that are scientifically studying the number of people that consciously recognize their previous lives. And so everything is kind of distilling and colliding into one truth, which is the same one that our spiritual people told us since many, many thousands of years. And then it's up to us to learn it, or to accept it, or to discover it and prove it or not. If you don't want to prove it, it's okay. Next time, maybe you're going to get better. Who knows?
Exactly, exactly. And as you mentioned about Shivan Shakti and you know energies, I think that balance of masculine and feminine energy, I
Yeah.
think that really differentiates the go-getters, or people who really really make a difference, not only in their own lives but in others' lives as well. And that's how they leave their legacy, their footprints. Great. So, Alessandro, to conclude, of course, if our listeners they would like to connect with you, and also get access to all the wonderful resources that you're providing, what should be the easiest way?
Fastest and easiest way is to go to wholegrainwisdom.com. That's the new company I'm building, and the community, especially, where we are um, slowly building up the new generation of entrepreneurs, or the ones that I call quantum founders. There are entrepreneurs, driven by inner power and energy, instead of perishable willpower that's always just a finite amount every single day when you wake up. And yeah, everything else starts from there. If you want to connect with me directly on LinkedIn and so on, you can also just look at the different resources on Holgren Wisdom, and happy to have a chat one to one eventually.
Super, super. Listeners, I make sure that all the details are mentioned in the show notes. Just refer to them along with this episode on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast. And I feel that I believe that Alessandro's journey, it reminds us that transformation doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in the messy middle, where we see ancient stories beautifully meeting, confluencing with modern struggles, and where resilience is also tested in real time. So, whether you are on the edge of burnout, or you're searching for purpose, or you are simply so much curious about how to live more consciously, I hope this conversation and Alessandro's journey, his life story, gave you a spark of direction. So, thank you so much once again, Alessandro, for doing this. This was really enlightening.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
And if I talk about mindfulness, listeners, it isn't about escaping the chaos. It's about learning to breathe through it. So, thank you to everyone for devoting their precious time to listen to this podcast. Until next time, keep listening to the whispers, and may they guide you to a life that feels true and aligned. Thank you.